Steve?
Yeah, we just got some vote from Philadelphia. It was a small update, 2,700 votes, but Joe Biden won like 2,400 of them, and you can see what that's done. His statewide lead in Pennsylvania, just on this small update from Philadelphia, has now broken the 30,000 vote mark, is nearly 31,000 votes. Joe Biden now leads Donald Trump in Pennsylvania by 30,908 votes. Again, I think this is, Maura had been saying, a small update coming from Philadelphia. This is what they were talking about here. It looks like about 2,700, about 2,800 votes just came in from Philadelphia. Biden winning 2,431 of them. So again, just that pace of overwhelmingly the mail ballots, especially in Philadelphia, going for Joe Biden. And again, they have more to come. This is just a perfect example of what we're talking about. We have long delays between these vote updates. We have a big pool of votes left to come. But every time we get these small incremental updates, they continue to be overwhelmingly for Biden, each one increasing his lead statewide. 2,000 votes here, 3,000 votes there, 4,000 votes there, and it sits now at 31,000, basically.
Well, and once again, with the latest batch that came in from Philadelphia, we once again have Joe Biden winning almost 9 out of 10 votes in that batch. And that's been consistent with everything we've seen over the past 3 days. And I suspect that will continue as we move forward throughout the day. John Meacham, let me bring you in right now because judging by what the news agencies have said, what the networks have said, what newspapers have said about calling this race, you just get the feeling that with Allegheny coming with votes that are most likely going to be disproportionately breaking in Joe Biden's favor, and then the Philly votes coming in piecemeal, where Joe Biden's getting 90%. Okay, we have an announcement to make. Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States. Biden is being called with the Pennsylvania votes that have just come in. Biden has been elected, Mika, and tell us about it.
Well, the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, has run for president 3 times, and the 3rd time has turned out to be the charm. Not only the charm, but possibly the most consequential election of our lifetimes. He is 77 years old. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but calls Wilmington, Delaware, his home. At the age of 29, Joe Biden became one of the youngest people ever elected to the U.S. Senate, and that is where he stayed for decades. Even, quite frankly, through tremendous tragedy that has struck his life. He has been witness and a part of some major moments in American history during his time as vice president of the United States under Barack Obama, and that is the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and health care remains his top priority.
And Willie, as we talk about this election, this race, we looked at Joe Biden in the eyes when we were in New Hampshire. He knew he was going to lose that race badly in the Democratic primary, just like he had been embarrassed in Iowa. And I must say, it was one of the few times I've been around Joe Biden in my life where when he sat down, I had nothing to say to him. It was a moment where you could tell Joe Biden knew that he was hanging by a very thin thread in that race. He knew he had to perform well the next week in Nevada. He came in second. That was good enough to buy him a ticket to South Carolina. And then, Willie, I must say, what happened over the next week in South Carolina? What happened when Jim Clyburn endorsed him? What happened when black voters, especially women black voters across the state of South Carolina, came out en masse to support his candidacy? Joe Biden was on his way. And while a lot of people will be focusing on the last few weeks of this campaign, we must say, and we said it at the time, we'll say it now, few of us have ever seen a candidacy turn around as quickly as Joe Biden's did over the next week or two. He went from being a man who's presumed to be a 3- or 4-time loser to a man who was rocketing towards a Democratic nomination. Now he is going to be the 46th president of the United States.
An extraordinary election in so many ways, not the least of which is that it was conducted in the middle of a pandemic, a campaign unlike we've ever seen before. And Joe, you're right. I go back to that day in New Hampshire, February 11th, the day of the New Hampshire primary. Joe Biden had finished 4th in Iowa. That night, he would finish 5th in New Hampshire. And our interview with him, the time we spent with him as we were preparing to interview, felt like a political wake. And if you go back and talk honestly to people around him, the mood was low. They didn't see a path forward. And then here comes South Carolina. Congressman Jim Clyburn makes his endorsement, and African-American voters, by and large, step in to effectively save Joe Biden's campaign in late February. And now here we are on this Saturday, yes, 3 or 4 days after Election Day at this point, but now we can say NBC News declares Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States of America.
And Mika, this breaking news from the BBC as well. Following NBC News' lead, the BBC is projecting Joe Biden has won the presidential election. The BBC projects that he secured enough Electoral College votes to defeat Donald Trump.
And as we give this context and talk about Joe Biden's incredible path to victory, it would be amiss not to mention that right now we are also in another moment of incredible transition in history, where we are going to be witnessing the first woman vice president of the United States.
Speaking of history, let's bring in John Meacham, a Pulitzer Prize-winning presidential historian. John Meacham, this has been an extraordinary presidential race. It has been an extraordinary year. And forgive me for being Pollyannish. I was saying this before the call. I'll say it now. The fact that as many Americans were involved in this race, in this campaign as they were, in the age of COVID is remarkable. Yes, Joe Biden got more votes than any person who has ever run for president of the United States. Second place, Donald J. Trump. This election has been won for the ages.
Close elections produce consequential presidencies. This is, I think, on a par with 1860, 1864, 1932, 1960, 1980, 2008. This is a moment where the country had to make a decision whether we would follow reason or whether we would continue to only be engaged in partisan passion. That does not mean that partisan passion is going away. There's an enormous amount of work ahead. But when historians look back, when citizens look back on this moment, it may well be that this was the beginning of the end of an era of perpetual partisan warfare. And a lot of that will be determined by the character of the person we've just elected president of the United States. Character is destiny.
Yep.
The Greeks taught us that. And Joe Biden's character is such that it may well be that man and moment were made for each other.
And you talk about man and moment being made for each other. I know there are a lot of people who are disappointed on both sides that a Democrat has been elected president and that it looks like Republicans will maintain control of the Senate. But we actually have people that are going to be running Washington, D.C. that actually knows how Washington, D.C. works and have been complaining for some time that we continue electing people to Washington, D.C. of both parties who are outsiders who don't know how to make Washington, D.C. work. But as you talk about the character of the president, the president-elect, I go back to Richard Ben Cramer and his remarkable stories about Joe Biden. And I'm reading here about how Joe Biden was supposed to be on the operating table for 4 hours. He ended up being on the table for 9 hours when there was surgery on him. And
for a brain aneurysm.
For a brain aneurysm. And the timing, the doctor said, was appropriate. And TJ, if we could show some pictures of Joe Biden here as the next president of the United States. But the timing was appropriate. And what he meant was they weren't a minute too soon. In fact, the moment they cut into Biden's head, maybe it was just a godly coincidence, the aneurysm burst like a gusher. Biden was lucky. The artery burst outward toward the wall of his skull. If it had gone the other way, of course, Joe Biden would not have survived. And there were so many times in Joe Biden's life where he was dealt one tragic blow after another. Of course, the passing of his wife and his daughter in a tragic accident, Mika. And then this, finding out that he had a brain aneurysm, but also believing that he was guided by God towards a larger destiny. And that's what he said after his failure in the 1988 presidential campaign. He could not understand why he had come up short, why things had gone so badly. And then his wife, Jill, Joe Biden, Val, and all of those close to Joe Biden understood if he had had the brain aneurysm while campaigning, he would not have come home and he would have been dead. When he woke up from that surgery, Mika, he said he understood why he had lost that race so badly. He believed that God still had a plan for his life. And here we are, 40 years later, Joe Biden is going to be the 46th president of the United States.
You talk about that brain aneurysm and that moment, that bedside moment when he told his sons that he didn't need to see them grow into men because he was proud of them. You think it would end there in terms of tragedy, but then there is Beau Biden. Beau Biden, who served as Delaware's Attorney General after returning home from Iraq, where he served as a captain with the Delaware National Guard. Beau Biden died of brain cancer. And Joe Biden always talks about health care being personal to him because it is. But it brings out something else that has struck me about not just Joe Biden, but Joe and Jill Biden, and knowing them over the years. Joe Biden received the first Brzezinski Award after the passing of my father for a million reasons. But the one I look to is how grounded they are. When you meet Joe and Jill Biden, you do not look at them and hear the sounds and sights, see the sights of people who are creatures of Washington. You see Scranton, you see Wilmington, you see people that are just like you and me, and that's everybody. They are people that never got changed by Washington and grounded by that hardship. Instead of broken by it, grounded by it, and God bless them, they want to go back to Washington after serving there for decades and then those 8 years serving under President Barack Obama. A lot of people after something like that, they just want to go home. They just want to get a break. No, Joe Biden wants to go back and serve.
More news outlets now calling this race, saying it is over. The Washington Post declaring right now, Joe Biden projected to be the nation's 46th president, elected to lead a divided country amid a deadly pandemic. And Willie, talking about Beau Biden, Beau is a friend of our show, like many Democrats, many Republicans. He came on the show many times. We always loved him, always respected him, was surprised that he didn't run himself to be senator of Delaware. He could have won that, but he decided to stay where he was because he was committed to the people of Delaware. I remember talking to Joe Biden. He was on the show earlier this year with us, and we asked him if he thought about Beau every day. And he teared up, and he told us that, in fact, it was Beau he was running for. It was Beau who was on his shoulder every day, pushing him forward. And as the young boy that was in the front seat of that ambulance, racing down to Walter Reed Hospital in the middle of a snowstorm when his father was dying, it made all the sense in the world that it was Beau pushing him forward, because Beau didn't want him to get out of the '88 race. Beau wanted him to keep going. Beau wanted him to keep fighting. And let's just tell it like it is. Most Democrats in the Democratic establishment at the start of this process had very few kind words to say about Joe Biden's candidacy. They thought he was too old. They thought he was too shaken up by losing Beau.
They thought he hugged
life,
too much.
They thought life had delivered too many hard blows to him. They didn't think that he could win the Democratic nomination and beat Donald Trump. But time and time again over the past year, Joe Biden has exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I think lost in the failures of the Trump administration and Donald Trump so controlling the airspace and the stage during this campaign is that Joe Biden and his team ran an excellent campaign. Now, it was a different campaign because we're in the middle of a pandemic. He didn't do the events he would normally do. He didn't work rope lines the way he normally would. But he resisted some of the tug left that he was encouraged by some to visit positions that may have hurt him. He was told that if you want to take this back, the central mission is to control the upper Midwest, get back those states that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Mission accomplished in Wisconsin and Michigan, and now we can say in the state of Pennsylvania. He grabbed back the 3 states, and he may not be done yet with, as you can see on that map, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Alaska still outstanding. But, Joe, back to your point about Beau Biden, there was an incredibly moving moment, and we took it live on Tuesday on Election Day. Joe Biden visited St. Joseph's on the Brandywine, the Roman Catholic church he's attended for a long time in Wilmington, Delaware, and where his children are buried. And to go in and to say a prayer and to visit the graves of your children on the day that you hope you may be elected President of the United States tells a lot of the story of Joe Biden's life that now culminates in this moment when he is the president-elect and will become the 46th president of the United States of America.
It is every parent's fear to have to bury their child. Joe Biden has had to do it twice, and he's had to bury a wife. And if you ask him how he got through that, he will tell you only his faith in God moved him forward. And with the loss, of course, of Beau, it was Jill, the same Jill Biden that Joe Biden credited with helping him dream again. Let's continue, Willie, through the breaking news. The Wall Street Journal now declaring Joe Biden is elected president of the United States. He pledged, quote, no blue states and no red states, but a united country. The Financial Times, breaking news. Joe Biden wins U.S. election after Pennsylvania triumph. And the New York Times, Joe Biden defeated President Trump and has been elected the President of the United States. He clinched the Electoral College with Pennsylvania. Willie.
Scranton Joe clinches the Electoral College fittingly with Pennsylvania. And an era that began for Donald Trump in politics on an escalator ride down 5.5 years ago now ends on a Saturday where he learned this news at his golf course in Virginia, where he is currently playing. And let us not lose in this what Mika mentioned. Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President-elect, the first woman, the first black woman, the first Indian American woman to hold that position. This is a momentous day in this country on that count. Mike Memoli is standing by for us at Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. Mike, you've been covering Joe Biden for 13 years, if I have my math right. This is a bit of delayed gratification for the campaign that felt like a couple of days ago they had this wrapped up. But now NBC and other organizations can say it officially, Joe Biden is the president-elect. What's the reaction there?
Well, obviously, just incredible jubilation on the part of the Biden team. They thought we were at this moment yesterday, of course, when Joe Biden took the lead in Pennsylvania. But, of course, the slow pace of results coming in, the lack of a projection from media organizations that he was, in fact, president-elect, put that on hold. But, you know, I've covered Joe Biden a long time. I've heard him very often quote Irish poets, not because he's Irish, as he would say, but because they're the best poets. And there's a particular poem he's very fond of quoting The Cure of Troy by Seamus Heaney, and I want to read a little bit from it because I think it's particularly relevant to this moment. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. The delay of yesterday to today means that 48 years to the day that Joe Biden won his very first election to the United States Senate, an upset victory over a popular incumbent Republican, he is now the president-elect of the United States. He does this after winning Pennsylvania, the state where he was born, where he's campaigned more than anywhere else. This happens 5 years, as you've been mentioning, after the loss of his son, Beau. I've talked to it now. I want to call him the former vice president. I'm calling him the president-elect now. Often during the course of this campaign about his son, he said at one point during the campaign in one of our conversations that he just wakes up every day and hopes that Beau is proud of him. He lost his son at the age of 46. Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. It's also interesting to note that he has said often that, and his wife said the same thing to me, Dr. Biden, in an interview, that they thought often during the course of this campaign how they should be campaigning for Beau Biden for president, not for Joe Biden as president. So Joe Biden, when he did lose his son and when he made that decision in late October of 2015 not to enter the 2016 race, there was a sense that, of course, that was the end of the Biden story, that there was his career in public office, at least, was over. But then Donald Trump happened. Joe Biden, perhaps on the eve of the 2016 election, more than other Democrats, sensed that Trump had a better chance of winning than a lot of Democrats wished to believe. And in fact, on the eve of the election, he was campaigning with Tim Kaine. And while Tim Kaine was almost in celebration mode, expecting to become the vice president in what was supposed to be sort of a patching of the torch night, Joe Biden told the crowd, God willing, we're going to win this election, but a lot of folks are going to vote for the other guy. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why is it? Why did we lose this connection with the type of working class voters that Joe Biden has always considered his base? And so when Donald Trump lost, Joe Biden felt that the moment was coming to him. When Donald Trump became president, Joe Biden felt the moment was coming to him. That a lot of Democrats doubted whether he was the right candidate. He and his campaign had unshakable confidence that he could speak in a way that Twitter and many in the progressive base didn't appreciate to the very voters that have now put him in the Oval Office, that blue wall that he helped rebuild, the suburban communities as well. And that's now the triumph of the Biden campaign.
And Mike Memley, you've been there covering every single day of this campaign. We'll let you go back, do some reporting. You can let us know when you expect to see the president-elect. Well, I'm sure we will see him at some point very shortly here. Mika, Fox News also now calling officially this election for Joe Biden.
Okay, thank you, Willie. And to Mike Memley's point about Beau, if there's anything you need to know about Joe Biden, it's this. If Beau Biden could be on that stage right now winning the presidency, Joe Biden would happily step off. It's an incredible moment. His path to victory has been long, arduous, and painful, and decades long, by the way. Let's bring in Claire McCaskill. I know, Claire, there's so much to say about Joe Biden's path to the presidency, but I have to say, as I look up, I think I just heard something, and it was a crack. It was a crack in the ceiling. I think it's worth talking about Kamala Harris at this moment as well. First Black American woman of Indian descent to be the vice president-elect of the United States of America.
First of all, congratulations to America and congratulations to the Biden campaign, who stay focused where they needed to be focused. And sincere congratulations to my friends Joe, and a double congratulations to Kamala. You need to look at her path. This is not somebody who was tapped on the shoulder at a preppy school. This is anything but someone that the other side would call elite. This is someone who went to a historically Black college and university and at Howard and then found her way into the very top levels of our government through intelligence, hard work, balance, listening, and an incredible ability to communicate. She deserves this. She earned this the right way. And it is such a great role model for all women in America. I am so proud of her and Joe Biden for selecting her. And they've got a very difficult job in front of them. But both of them together, I think, have the equipment necessary to navigate a stark reality, Mika. And we can't forget this. Donald Trump is going to be a GOP kingmaker for years to come. He is incredibly popular. He's seen as their hero. And this country is very divided. And I think all of us in my party need to be patient and understand that we've got to try to do a better job of bringing people together, or all we're going to do is sit on the opposite sides of the room and yell at each other.
Well put.
It's a great point, Claire. There are many people who haven't worked in Washington like you who think you can just get your way. James Madison and the Founding Fathers thought otherwise and created a system of checks and balances that require Republicans and Democrats work together. Joe Biden has said he's going to do that. He's going to bring people together. He's going to bring parties together, and he will be president of the entire United States, not just of Democrats, not just for people who voted for him, but for everybody. John Meacham, I'm reminded, Mike Mimley talked about poets and Joe Biden's favorite poets. I'm reminded of when we spoke of Beau Biden's passing after it happened. I quoted Bobby Kennedy from April 4th, 1968, something that you've spoken beautifully about on your podcast. And Kennedy's quote of Aeschylus, his favorite Greek poet. And Joe Biden took this to heart, and it's something we talked about on the show. Aeschylus wrote about 500 years before Christ's birth, "He who learns must suffer, and even in our sleep, pain that cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart. And in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom to us by the awful grace of God." And Joe Biden knows that awful grace better than anyone. But when you see these moments on a campaign trail where he goes up and he hugs somebody who has lost a father or who's lost a child, when he speaks to Gold Star parents, he has that extraordinary connection and that almost superhuman empathy, because he has suffered so much in his life. And he uses that suffering to apply that grace of God to others.
Joe Biden is among the most empathetic men I've ever met, much less public figures, in that he's in the tradition of George Herbert Walker Bush. They both have a personal capacity to put themselves in the other person's shoes. That is a personal virtue. It is also going to be a political virtue that will benefit this country for at least 4 years to come and possibly far beyond. Because the deficit of decency, the deficit of hope, the ascendance of fear, the ascendance of selfishness that we have seen in this country will not totally end with any single election, but a single election can surely help. And what was on the ballot here was decency and democracy and empathy. And Joe Biden is particularly well equipped for this moment. He's not perfect. He'd be the last person on the planet to tell you he was perfect. There are vices, but there are virtues here, and they are deeply human virtues. They are deeply American virtues. And I think it's wonderfully poetic that it was Pennsylvania that has ended what President Ford in another context called our long national nightmare, because it was in Philadelphia that, as Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Convention in that fabled story, and an important woman in Philadelphia said, "What will it be, Mr. Franklin? Have you given us a republic or a monarchy?" And he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." The republic is being kept today.
Well said, as always, John Meacham. Let's go back to Steve Kornacki. Steve, we saw that vote come in from Philadelphia, and a couple of seconds after you touched your magic board there, the election was called for Joseph Biden. What did you see there? What came in to put him over the top?
Yeah, well, you know, it was those few thousand votes in Philadelphia. It put him over 30,000. And then actually, literally seconds after that, we had been teeing up Allegheny County, Pittsburgh. More vote came in from Allegheny County. So you actually see now Biden's lead grew further. 34,414. That's his statewide lead. Now, again, I think that's going to keep ticking up today. If you still want to follow this stuff, and you still want to follow the vote count, keep in mind, you know, Trump's number in Pennsylvania in 2016, he won the state by 46,000. Maybe you want to see if Biden can exceed that before all is said and done. That certainly seems possible here. But yeah, it was everything we were talking about all morning, all night last night. It was just, there was long gaps between getting new votes, and a lot of time in between to say the pattern here is clear, the pattern here is clear. And every time we got a new vote, it just reaffirmed that that was the pattern. And eventually, I think there's an accumulation of small updates that just got to a point where it's, hey, this is now 34,000 votes. This is now rising. The idea that Trump is going to overturn this with provisional ballots that are, you know, we can already see have quite a few Democrats in them that traditionally are extremely Democratic. The idea that Donald Trump is suddenly going to win 96% of that vote or something like that, you know, is just the implausibility, I think, just finally reached the critical threshold.
So, Steve, you've been at that board standing for nearly a week interrupted, so we're going to let you go. But before we dismiss you, just give us one last snapshot of what else is out there in the country, what else we should be watching today. Joe Biden is the president-elect, but he could well add to that total today.
Sure, yes, absolutely. Look, the place that he's most likely immediately to add to that total would be Nevada. You know, we've taken you through the situation there. Clark County, Nevada looks like the outstanding ballots favor Biden. He already leads in the state. If he gets Nevada, that'll move up to 279. In Arizona, he's trying to hang on. We've taken you through it. He's got a lead. It's dwindling. It does not seem like it's dwindling at a rate that would actually get Trump over the top there. So if Biden can hang on in Arizona, that would push him up to 290 in the Electoral College. There's Georgia. That's going to take some time. Biden's leading now. Certainly possible he could get Georgia. If he wins that, that would put him up to 306. Alaska, again, I don't want to speak for the decision desk. I don't think he's getting Alaska. North Carolina. Again, I don't think he's getting North Carolina. I could talk this way now, right? I don't think he's getting North Carolina.
Yes. Let it rip, Steve.
I think his ceiling here, and it's a plausible one, is 306. I think Biden could very plausibly land at 306 electoral votes, which, by the way, 306 was Donald Trump's number in 2016. Yep. So maybe there's some symmetry there, and Biden lands on that in 2020.
All right.
Steve Kornacki, America has hung on your every word this week. We have hung on your every word this week. You are the pillar of our network. You have carried our coverage. You deserve all the praise you're getting. And frankly, buddy, we love you. Great job. Thanks so much.
Well, that's really kind of you.
Thank you. Willie.
And let me just say,
go get some rest.
As your agent, two things. You go get some rest, and I'm going to make Phil pay more for Steve Kornacki. Know your value, my friend.
Yes.
A big pay raise, baby, a big pay raise. Thank you so much,
I like
Steve.
the way you're talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. He really has done an extraordinary job at that board. And again, he's been driven by data, not ideology. He's been talking about the numbers, and that's why people on both sides can trust him. You're looking right now at crowds that are building outside of the White House. There are also crowds in New York City and across America that are building. We will be bringing those to you as well. Right now, though, I want to bring in, we've got Mike Barnacle, who's been a friend of Joe Biden's for quite some time, but I want to bring in Reverend Al first, and then we're going to get to Mike. And Rev, I want to just follow up on something that I had said earlier, right after we made the call. You and I talked, and we were less than pleased early on in this process because so many people were underestimating Joe Biden. And time again, you were talking about the latte liberals that voted against him in the first couple of contests, and you kept telling me, Joe, just wait till South Carolina. Just wait till Super Tuesday. These people don't know what they're talking about. This is Joe Biden's race to lose, and he ain't going to lose. Those were your words after Iowa and after New Hampshire. You must feel vindicated today.
I do feel very happy. You know, I'm here in Harlem at National Action Network does a Saturday rally every Saturday. And one of the people in the rally is one of the Central Park Five. And for him to watch Joe Biden win when Donald Trump had taken out ads to have him executed, it is a real moment here at the House of Justice. But I feel vindicated because Joe Biden really connected with people. And if there's anyone that can heal this country, it is someone that has been through the pain, has had to grow, because we fought over the crime bill 30 years ago, and he's grown. And I think that you have the poetry of him winning in his home state, from Scranton, Pennsylvania, but you also have the poetry of here was a man who was the vice president to the first black man that was president, that is now bringing in the first black woman to be vice president. He is the bridge to bring this country together because he has served the black and now has a black woman that will serve with him. And this is the kind of healing we want. I was in the room, Joe and Mika, when, and I think this is important. I was there when he met with George Floyd's family the day before the funeral in Houston. And only Joe Biden could show the empathy and compassion and took George Floyd's young daughter to the side and talked to her one-on-one like she was the head of state. And she said to him, you know, my dad's going to change the world. And he's quoted that everywhere. That's the kind of man we need to bring this country together. We're not going to always agree, but we're going to have to trust the one that convenes us. And I think he's earned our trust because he understands pain.
Well, the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, just issued a statement reading, quote, I am honored and humbled by the trust the American people have placed in me and in Vice President-elect Harris. In the face of unprecedented obstacles, a record number of Americans voted, proving once again that democracy beats deep in the heart of America. With the campaign over, it's time to put the anger and the harsh rhetoric behind us and come together as a nation. It's time for America to unite and to heal. We are the United States of America, and there is nothing we can't do if we do it together. I'll go to Mike Barnicle. I know you've known Joe Biden for decades, Mike, and I'm thinking of words that apply to this journey right now. Long, painful, arduous, tragedy-filled, patriotic, patient, joyful. That's been Joe Biden's path to the presidency, and quite frankly, the Democrats could not have picked a more perfect candidate to meet the moment.
You know, Mika, throughout the long arc of his career, Joe Biden has been consistent with one thing above all. He has always gone home. Nearly every night he went home when his children were sick and ill, recovering from that accident. That's in the 1970s. But home is the metaphor for Joe Biden, I would think, today. And that's what he wants to do with the country, with the United States of America, is to bring all of us home. I'm sure right now in the Biden household, as they prepare to travel to the convention center or the hotel, wherever the speech is going to take place, there are tears, lots of tears, because the entire family is gathered there. And they are tears of humility, which is really critical in terms of dealing with what's going on in this country right now. We've been talking an awful lot over the past 3.5 years, and certainly over the past weeks, about living in a divided nation. And there's no getting around it. We are a divided country. But there's a cause for this. There's a reason for this. And one of the biggest reasons is that every single day, every single hour of nearly every single day for the last 3.5 years, we have been led by a president who has gone out of his way to create division in this country. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when you have Joseph R. Biden assume the presidency, a man directly opposite to the nature, the personality, and the moral code of the incumbent president of the United States. And if there is one clip I wish we could show, it would be the clip of Joe Biden, sitting vice president, speaking with members of the Parkland family, Parkland High School family, that lost their husband. I believe he was an assistant coach. They have a special needs child. And the sitting vice president goes down the family line, clearly moved, thanking them. He turns to leave. And the son, the special needs son, off camera, shouts, "Wait," and runs to Joe Biden, buries himself in the sitting vice president's chest, saying, "He was my dad." And watch the vice president's reaction, surprised, unplanned, instinctively human. Watch what he says. He hugs the young man and says, "We're going to be all right. You're going to be all right." That one clip contains the promise of the next 4 years.
It is just past 12 noon on Saturday, November the 7th, 2020. Joe Biden has just been declared the next president of the United States. He will be the 46th president of the United States. A man who, at the age of 29, was elected to the United States Senate. But before he could even be sworn in, lost his wife and a child in a tragic car accident right before Christmas. Biden did not want to go to the Senate. He did not want to be sworn in. He wanted to stay with his two boys who had also been severely hurt in that accident. Ted Kennedy talked him in to moving forward with his life, told him to come to Washington, D.C. It would help him move forward, much like it was George H.W. Bush who encouraged James Baker to get involved in politics to move past the loss of his wife. Joe Biden took Ted Kennedy's advice. He went to Washington, but as Mike Barnacle said, every night he would return home on the Acela, and he would return home to make sure that nobody else was taking care of his boys. He wanted to be the one that read them to sleep at night. He wanted to be the father they would wake up to in the morning. He wanted to be the dad who would play catch with them in the afternoon. And Joe Biden kept making that train ride every day that he could back home to Wilmington, Delaware. And Willie, as we sit here just past noon and we're seeing celebrations outside the White House, we're seeing celebrations across New York City and across the country. You look at this man who's been counted out so many times, who's been dismissed not only by Republicans, but dismissed by elites in the Democratic Party, because Joe Biden, after all, didn't go to an Ivy League school. In fact, he is the first president that we will have that has not gone to an Ivy League school since Ronald Reagan was elected in 1988 and left the White House in 1980 and left the White House in 1989. So Joe Biden is a man who has stayed in touch with the American people, and he is a man who now will be leading the American people, and it will be difficult. Donald Trump will not concede the race. That's the word that we're receiving right now. But time moves on, history rolls on, and Joe Biden, regardless of what Donald Trump does or does not do, is going to be sworn in as President of the United States on January 20th, 2021.
Yes, and to your point about the sitting president of the United States, as you might expect, he's not handling this well. I won't read his statement because it's so riddled with inaccuracies and conspiracy theories and assertions that already have been rejected in courts of law across the country this week. But the bottom line is, Donald Trump says, quote, "The simple fact is this election is far from over." saying he's going to fight beginning on Monday in the courts. Rev, I wanted to go to you as we sort of peel through the layers of this victory for Joe Biden. And if you're just joining us, Joe Biden is the president-elect. He crossed the threshold of 270 electoral votes when NBC News and now many other organizations called the state of Pennsylvania for him. He's at 273 right now. At the party, Rev, the Democratic Party, and, you know, there's the oldest story in Washington is Dems in disarray. Well, they weren't in disarray during this campaign. You know, when Bernie Sanders stepped away and suspended his campaign, he backed Joe Biden. His supporters were frustrated that a centrist might be the nominee, but he said this election is too important. You have to support Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren, the same could be said for her. Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, of course, earlier. The party got in line because they knew the stakes were so high, and they knew that, yes, as a centrist, Joe Biden just might be the guy who could defeat Joe Biden. So the party, which is often maligned for being disorganized, it seems to me deserves some credit on this day.
Be curious.
Absolutely. I think it was unprecedented kind of operational unity that the party showed. Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren, as well as Buttigieg, not only endorsed him, they worked tirelessly all over the country for him. But I think the tone was set, Willie, when you must remember during the debates, and I went to just about every debate, I'll never forget the night that Kamala Harris had really attacked Joe Biden in the debate around busing issues. And he turned around and asked her to be his running mate. He showed the tone of coming together and healing when you cannot take personal a disagreement and even has as your running mate someone that really did you a real shot during one of the debates. It shows the kind of leader he'll be. It shows the kind of leader she'll be. And it shows how this party says we're not going to be petty like the president incumbent. We can get past our disagreements for a bigger picture.
And Claire McCaskill, there are a number of ways in which many believe Joe Biden might be the man for the moment right now. His belief in the value of bipartisanship and the fact that he has relationships with a lot of leading Republicans right now. He has worked with them. That would be number one. And I think it's not too early to talk about our relationships around the world. He was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as well as vice president. And there is work to be done on both fronts. Fair enough?
Absolutely fair enough. I mean, first, let's acknowledge that joy is spontaneously breaking out all over America right now. I predict that you're going to see large crowds all over the country celebrating what has just happened. And it's okay for us to wallow in that for a while. You know, my party stayed unified, and that's not always easy. There are very strong opinions within the Democratic Party. But we also have to stay focused on the fact that we did not have the victories up and down the ballot that we'd hoped for. And we've got to figure that part out. And we've got to figure out how we actually get things done. Yes, Joe Biden will be able to do a lot by executive order, just as Donald Trump has done. And nobody has stomped on the different branches of government more completely than Donald Trump. I mean, he has totally taken away the power of the congressional branch with the acquiescence, I might add, of Republicans in Congress. So now Joe Biden, he'll be able to push the envelope on executive power also. But that will not fix some of the problems we've got to fix. And that's going to require our party to stay unified and everyone not getting irritated if we try to reach out to the other side and do better.
Yeah, that's a great point, Claire. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being here. And as we look at jubilation from crowds, that is something that Democrats, unless they just want to set themselves up to be disappointed, need to keep in mind as we look at these cheering crowds. Joe Biden will be president in a divided Washington. In a Washington with a Republican Senate, most likely, in a Democratic House, with a conservative Supreme Court, and with a Democratic president. Does that sound like chaos to you? Well, if so, you probably should read the Constitution of the United States and the Federalist Papers, because what it's called in this system of government is a system of checks and balances. There will be no rolling over Republicans. There will be no ignoring Mitch McConnell or the Republican Senate because they are most likely going to be running the United States Senate. And it's going to require that Joe Biden uses every skill in his toolbox, every skill that he's learned since he went to the United States Senate and got sworn in when he was 30 years old. And there are some who see that as a negative. I must say, if they do, that's unfortunate because that's the way our system has worked for quite some time. And I must say also, it's a system that worked fairly well, even though there was partisan rhetoric. David Ignatius, when I was in Congress and when Bill Clinton was president of the United States, I always made the joke that you could impeach Bill Clinton on Tuesday and he would invite you to go golfing with him on Wednesday. And what that meant was that together, Bill Clinton and a very conservative Republican Congress balanced the budget for the first time in a generation, balanced it 4 years in a row, passed welfare reform, saw the United States economy grow at a strong, strong clip. And it was bipartisanship that worked because Bill Clinton had been doing the same thing in Arkansas for over a decade. This is something Joe Biden's seen up close for some time in the United States Senate. Do we not think that perhaps he can manage this better than other presidents this century who haven't had quite the feel of the United States Senate and the House of Representatives as institutions?
Joe Biden has the political education for this moment. He's been, I think, pitch perfect as it began to be clear that he was going to be the president-elect. He's talked about putting anger behind us. He's talked about healing. And he has the tools to try to make this system that you were talking about, a system of checks and balances, a system that often allows, sometimes encourages division, to make it work. I think the contrast between his comments, generous, soothing, about being the president for the people who didn't vote for him as much as the people who did, is in such contrast to what we've been hearing from President Trump. If you wanted a snapshot of what this change will be about, just look at the two statements in the last hour. So I've sensed, as somebody who covers foreign policy, I've sensed the world taking a collective sigh of relief over the last 48 hours, really, as it began to seem likely that Joe Biden would be our next president. The world has worried that America had changed in fundamental ways from the country that people thought they knew the United States was. And we still have a long way to go. Our divisions are deep, but I think there must be a feeling around the world that perhaps these Trump years have been a bit of an aberration. The challenge for Biden now is to do what he's talked about in the abstract, to find a way to reach out to the people who didn't vote for him, to reach out to a country that's divided, to pull people back together. Just say one more thing I'm struck by. When I think of the kind of two key moments along the way to this story, one is obviously the South Carolina primary. Joe Biden was just dead in the road until John Clyburn and other leaders, especially from the black communities, said, this is the person we think can pull our party together and can win, can beat Donald Trump. You know, the importance of winning, not of ideology, but of winning, was central in that moment. So that's really how Biden came back from the dead as a candidate. And then the other moment really involves black voters and white working class voters in the so-called blue wall. The thing that the next president needs to do, pulling the country back together, taking those working class voters who were so angry that they voted for Donald Trump, even when they knew that he was a person sometimes of low character, not a truth teller. They voted for him anyway because they really were angry. Biden has found a way to speak to them in putting the victory in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin together. And that's the most powerful thing, I think, as we go forward. He's already begun to do in his victory what the country needs.
And Joe Biden does recognize the anger that is out there. He recognized it in 2016. He recognizes it even now. In fact, he told us on set in 2016 in Philadelphia that people were angry, and that because they were angry, that the Democrats had lost touch with working class white voters. And that has been his goal. There are a group of voters out there that do not trust the Washington establishment for good reason. They do not trust the Democratic Party. They do not trust the news media. And Donald Trump was a person that, for them, fought back against all of these people who they believed looked down on them. It'll be a challenge, Mika, for Joe Biden to show that he understands the plight of what they're going through, and he understands why they've become disillusioned. One other thing, too, David Ignatius was talking about it. As we looked at the vote tallies coming in, let's think about this. The morning after Joe Biden was losing Wisconsin, and then the votes from Milwaukee County came in, with a disproportionate share of those votes being black voters who put him over the top in Wisconsin. Joe Biden was losing Michigan. And then Wayne County came in. Detroit came in. The disproportionate share of those voters who put him over the top in Michigan, black voters. We just called Philadelphia. We just called Pennsylvania. You can say the same thing about Philly and Pittsburgh, parts of Pittsburgh. A disproportionate share of black voters put him over the top in Pennsylvania as well as Georgia. So I expect for there to be great representation in the Biden cabinet of black leaders. And no, we're not talking about like housing or some other administrative branch. I think you're going to see, not only with the Vice President of the United States, but in other major cabinet positions, black leaders put in position of power who can really shape the future of the next 4 years.
To David Ignatius's point about the concern that some voters had that America had changed in some fundamental ways. And to your point, Joe Biden often addresses openly the people he knows will not vote for him, or today, the people who did not vote for him. He often talks about how he wants to be their president, too. And it sort of reminds me of Elijah Cummings, even during some of the toughest times in the Trump administration when he was addressing one of Trump's aides, the empathy that Elijah showed to Michael Cohen, the empathy that he showed openly about the road that he had taken in life, and also the question that Elijah asked very fairly to everybody but to him, that when you're dancing with the angels someday, the question will be, what did you do to save our democracy? And Reverend Al Sharpton, for the black community and for black women especially, I think they answered that question in their votes. Fair to say?
Very fair to say. We lost this year John Lewis, who was beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, to secure our protection of our right to vote. We lost Elijah Cummings. I think that a lot of us, by the millions, had in mind that we owed it to John Lewis and Elijah Cummings. We owed it to Shirley Chisholm, who was the first black woman to be elected to Congress. I was 18. I was a youth director when she ran for president. And I talked often to Kamala Harris about she has the torch of Shirley Chisholm and Hillary Clinton. All of that, I think, drove a lot of people that were the bedrock voters that Joe just talked about that brought this victory to Joe Biden. We went in there knowing we were voting against the most racist, xenophobic, homophobic, and misogynist president we've seen in our lifetime. So we had a reason to vote But because of the John Lewises, we had the capacity to vote, and we were not going to waste it. We stood on long lines in those places that you named, Joe, but it wasn't as long as it was to get the right to vote and to get it protected in the first place. And that's why everybody is in the streets celebrating, because they're celebrating not only a man and a woman that won, they're celebrating an America that may get a little closer back to the track that we wanted it to be on.
And messages of congratulations coming in for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. This one from Hillary Clinton. She just tweeted this: "The voters have spoken, and they have chosen Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be our next president and vice president. It is a history-making ticket, a repudiation of Trump, and a new page for America. Thank you to everyone who helped make this happen. Onward together," writes former Secretary Hillary Clinton, of course, who lost to Donald Trump 4 years ago in her own bid for the White House. We can also add Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressing his congratulations, and the mayor of Paris tweeting simply, "Welcome back, America." Mike Barnicle, let me go to you. You know, we've talked over the course of this campaign about the issues, about the economy, coronavirus, how the new president might approach that if Joe Biden were elected, and now he'll have that challenge in front of him. But away and apart from the issues was something else that you and I have talked a lot about, and we've talked about it in the show, was something more visceral about the way the country felt every day for the last 3.5 years, in a state of perpetual combat and anxiety for some people, and being suspicious of the person across the street or the person on social media, and always feeling like we're at war with each other, political war with each other. Joe Biden sought over the course of the campaign to show that he would turn down the temperature on some of that. You can go back to the first debate when Donald Trump interrupted him time and time again, and Joe Biden would sort of just exhale and say, "Come on, man," or "Shut up, man," or whatever he said that night. There are all the issues that Joe Biden will face. There is the coronavirus pandemic sitting in front of us, but there's a sense of calm that Joe Biden gives off and that he tried to express over the course of the campaign that I think a lot of Americans probably voted for.
You know, Willie, you just put your finger, I think, on one critical aspect of the president-elect's nature. Look, his name is Joe Biden. It's not St. Joseph. So we should all be clear on that, and he knows that better than most. And he's been a United States Senator for 3, almost 4 decades. He was Vice President of the United States for 8 years under Barack Obama. But despite all those offices and all the privilege that comes with those offices, he remains one of the most grounded, normal human beings you would ever encounter. And that is still with him. That is still a part of him. Always has been. I just got a text message from a fairly substantial figure in the United States of America, not an elected official. And the text message reads, "The arc of our children's and grandchildren's life just changed." And I think, getting to your question, I think that text message says a lot about why so many people voted for Joe Biden. And if we take away the wait and the watch that we've all been engaged in here for the past 4 days, waiting for that magic number of 270 to be hit, and it does arrive finally, there's a larger number. And the larger number is the numbers, the millions and millions of people who voted, and the millions of people who voted for Joe Biden, giving him a significant mathematical victory. Take the Electoral College out of it. It's a significant national victory. And so he now sits as president-elect of the United States, and I think, again, to what you just raised as an issue, what he's going to bring to this office is a sense of compassion, a sense of responsibility, a sense of competence, a sense of humility, and a sense of he knows who you are, because he is, in part, despite the offices he's held, you could find him, you know, several years ago, even as vice president, as United States Senator, Saturday mornings, most Saturday mornings in Wilmington, at Home Depot, you know, going through the aisles, looking for a knob here for the bathroom or whatever. He knows our lives. And as Jim Clyburn once said, he knows us. And that's Joe Biden.
You know,
that's a really good text for you to get, Mike, since you have like 200 grandchildren that just were born during this pandemic. But congratulations on all of them.
So Mike Barnicle has talked about the 74 million people who have voted for Joe Biden, the most that have ever voted for any candidate running for president. But knowing Joe Biden, I know what number he's looking at. 70,337,214 Americans who voted for Donald Trump. We are a nation divided. We have been a nation divided. And that's nothing new. You could go back, and we'll talk to John Meacham again soon. You could go back to the election of 1800. It was perhaps more divided that year than ever before. Our founding fathers at times loathed each other. That's why we have a system of checks and balances. And so while you and your family may be one of those 74 million, Joe Biden understands, at least he has said throughout this campaign, he understands that he serves the 70,337,214 people across America who voted for Donald Trump as well. And I say this because many of those, well, not many of those people, but most of my friends, most of my family members voted for Donald Trump. And while I don't understand why they voted for Donald Trump, I know that they did. I know that they love America. I know that they want what's best for America. And I know this, and this would be hard for a lot of people watching today to understand. I know that they are very scared for America right now because they stopped trusting Democrats, people in the media, and Washington elites a long time ago. Joe Biden understands that. He has said throughout the campaign he understands that. And it is going to be job number one for him to bring this country back. Mike Barnicle, again, you've known Joe Biden for so long. Can you talk about Joe and his family? Talk about Val, the people who are closest to him, the very tight group of family members, and the impact that they have on him. And also, you were telling me a story from just a few nights ago about just how damn normal he is, even in the most nerve-wracking of circumstances, that Joe Biden is used to this, and he's used to pressure. And he even when the presidency's hanging in the balance, he remains grounded. He remains himself.
Yeah, Joe, they had a sort of a surprise birthday party for his sister Val the other evening, I think Wednesday evening, in the middle of all this tension about waiting to see, which state is going to come in, where the vote is going. And I'm told that the then former vice president, now the president-elect, you could never tell that he was in the middle of this tension-ridden week because that's how normal he is. And today, first of all, the Biden family is a tribe, all of them together. They are one unit, including the president-elect, one unit. And they fight for each other, they feel for each other, they cry together, they pray together as a family unit. And the president-elect knows a few things. He knows that the turbulence, the cultural turbulence in this country is going to continue. He knows that the divisions that exist now are not going to suddenly disappear. He knows that Donald Trump is not going away. But here's what else the country ought to know. That Joe Biden is a man convinced through experience that healing offers the promise of a better tomorrow. He, along with the help of his family, healed himself when he lost his son, when he lost his daughter and his wife at the age of 29. And the healing comes again when Bo dies. And it's a renewable thing. He's constantly healing the sorrows that he has lived with for nearly 50 years now. Those sorrows, they don't just simply disappear. They stay with you. They cling with you. You hear a song on the radio, and it will remind you of something that happened when his children died when he was 29. You pass a Little League field, and he will think about watching his boys, Hunter and Bo, playing baseball. They never go away. But he knows how to make them work through healing. And through healing comes his purpose. And his purpose is to try to heal those divisions that exist in the country, to lower the temperature of the country, to stop the tweeting, to stop the cultural wars by just a calm, effective, competent job as President of the United States.
I want to go to John Meacham in a second, but Mike, you referenced a moment from Vice President Biden with a young man with special needs who lost his father in the Parkland shooting. Let's take a look at that now.
Who are the parents?
Yeah. I'm white. I'm Chris Hickson's wife.
God love you.
Thank you. I wanted to. Okay. This is Chris's son. I'm his son.
Well, how are you? Thank you for hugging me. You okay? You okay? You'll be okay. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. I promise. Okay, I promise.
Mike, or let's go to Joe first. Joe, for all the moments of this campaign, if you go back through a year and a half worth of moments and debates and on the campaign trail and interviews and everything else, it seems to me a moment like that and another one where Vice President Biden went up to a young man who had a stutter and gave him a speech that, wherever you are on the political spectrum, brought tears to your eyes of encouragement. Those are the moments that break through. Those are the moments that remind you of fundamental goodness.
Well, and you're exactly right. When the really moving moments there, but I must say, every time I see him speaking before Gold Star families and see clips of that, it is so moving to have a leader explaining to parents that it hurts like hell and it will always hurt. But there will become a time when the memory of your child will bring a smile to your face before it brings a tear to your eyes. And Mika, those would just be hollow words if another politician spoke them. But it's something that Joe Biden feels because it's something that Joe Biden lives. And as you look at Jill Biden and some of these pictures that we're showing, it was Jill Biden who Joe credited with helping him dream again.